Thank you and good afternoon. Again, my name is Jim Sano and I'm the president of Geographic Expeditions. And I thought I would touch upon the intersection of, since travel in some respects has been portrayed as an evil force in some corners in terms of cultural resource preservation, touch upon a couple things. One is I had the great fortune to, right out of college, to work for the U.S. National Park Service and for 14 years, actually, in Yosemite National Park. And this is a park, actually, one of the most heavily visited parks in the country. It gets about 3.5 million visitors a year. The concessionaire within the park, the company that provides all the lodging and all the facilities, food service, and so forth, it's about a $300 million enterprise. And then in the surrounding communities, it generates roughly about $5 billion worth of economic activity when you consider all the surrounding gateway communities and everything. And we figured at the time that for every hotel bed or lodging bed in the park, roughly 85 jobs were connected to that bed in some way, shape, or form when you look at the whole food chain. And when you look at, at the time when I was working in the park, I didn't really realize I was in the travel world. But in reality, that's, in looking backwards, that's what in many respects it was. And of course, our National Park Service has this really paradoxical mission, and that is to conserve natural and cultural resources for future generations, and yet provide for a high quality visitor experience. And as you can see, as you know, there's probably no right answer or formula for that. And that is also borne out, not only in our country, but throughout the world. But the actual force of tourism and the good and the evil that it could do is really quite powerful throughout the world. It's approximately 1 in 12 jobs around the world are in some way connected to travel and tourism. It generates roughly $1 trillion worth of economic activity. It's really fourth after automobiles, oil and gas, and other chemicals. So it's really quite massive. And again, it can have its beneficial and destructive effects in terms of conserving natural and cultural resources. But during my time at Yosemite, I was part of the team that was tasked with creating a general management plan for the park. And as you can imagine, there were a million different opinions about what the fate of this park should be. And really, some of the key lessons that emerged out of that was, one, there really had to be a thorough assessment of the resources, both cultural and natural. And what emerged out of that was really kind of a biological application to a planning framework that was an attempt to really set a carrying capacity for the resource. And that is how many people could really come into this area or live in this area and yet create a framework to preserve that resource for future generations. The other part of that was absolutely vital, and I would maintain that it was not only vital in this process, but anywhere in the world these days, and that is a public engagement process. In this case, roughly 60,000 people wanted their say in the future of this park. It was quite the undertaking to really go all across the country to collect this input and integrate that into the planning process and make people feel that they were participating and they were being heard. The other thing was to have the legal and the legislative framework to implement plans. Yosemite was really the first federally designated park way back in 1864 when right there in the middle of the Civil War, President Lincoln decided this should be protected. And so, and mainly that was for its natural beauties, but the mission of our Park Service really is also to encompass the cultural heritage. And so we're, in my hometown, the U.S. Army had a substantial Army facility there, the Presidio, that is now the most heavily visited U.S. National Park Service area in the country. 14 million visits in some way, shape, or form throughout the year. And an integral part of that was to really create a funding mechanism to do all this restoration work on all of these historic buildings and such. And in fact, that was part of the congressional charter that they laid down. That says you have to make this self-funding. That is another critical piece in terms of creating the conservation financing strategies and tools to make it all happen. And whether it's in the international scene or the domestic scene here, there's a giant toolbox that is emerging to make this happen. Carolyn, you should raise your hand. Carolyn is on the board of the Trust for Public Land as well, and she and I served together for a number of years. And the last thing I wanted to leave you with is really there are some amazing partnerships and opportunities that I would encourage you all to explore. TPL, the Trust for Public Land, is one of those because they have become one of the leaders in terms of developing this toolbox, and it's quite astounding. Some of the things that they've been able to achieve in terms of leveraging certain amounts of capital into rather massive amounts of capital. I mean, TPL in its history has been instrumental in raising $34 billion worth of conservation funding. And really, with Carolyn, you correct if I'm, with very little seed money. In doing so, and part of that is marketing, part of it's communication, part of it is really the planning, the vital planning that it takes to create, to convince people that there is an economic benefit in terms of conserving, whether it's open space or cultural heritage. And many of these organizations are now having a growing body of case studies that we should all study and really share with one another. And lastly, I wanted to leave you with one other organization that I think would be a really great partner for this group, and that is an organization that was formerly named the Rural Development Institute. It's now known as Landessa. It's based out of Seattle. It's one of it's a group of attorneys, really, and they're going all around the world and working with governments to create the legal framework for conservation. And the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation are pouring a fairly significant amount of money into this because they realize that you can come up with all the great plans in the world, but if you don't have a means to implement it, if you don't have a means to enforce it, then it doesn't stand a whole lot of chance to make it happen. And one case in India that I could think of immediately is they're now working with various states in India to make it possible for women to own land. And which many people believe would be a very transformative thing in terms of creating a more sustainable future for many challenged areas. So, thank you.